G'day there, Aaron Brasher and Huon Hooke from the Real Review, and we're delving into the world of Riesling today. We've got some examples here from Germany, New Zealand and Australia. Germany being the homeland or the historical birthplace of Riesling. Have a little bit of a taste and dig into what these styles are all about.
We have some great examples here, 2 from Australia, 2 from New Zealand, 2 from Germany. The Australians are Pikes from Polish Hill River and Rieslingfreak, also from the Clare Valley. New Zealand, we have Dry River from Martinborough, and we have Framingham from Marlborough. 2 of the most exalted producers in New Zealand. And from Germany, we have a Rheingau wine, and we have a Mosel Valley wine from the famous Dr. Thanisch, Bernkasteler Doctor no less.
I think Riesling is all about an expression of its place. With Riesling, that's generally no artefact added, fermented in stainless steel or maybe older oak. Generally, it speaks of its sense of place and is delicate, but it also needs to be treated with a lot of respect in the winery, but when it's right, it is fantastic. And again, this versatility around the occasion you can consume it at, whether it's going out for dumplings at 11 o'clock in the morning to yum cha or with seafood or whatever time. It's always Riesling time in my household.
The sun is not yet over the yard arm, but it's close.
Riz is the biz.
Riz is the biz.
I really like this Merle Riesling, the 2025 from Pikes. I think the first vintage was back in the early 90s, mid 90s, and it's the best parcels of fruit year in, year out, prominently from Polish Hill River, and next to bone dry, lovely line, lovely length, very pure. It's got that real lime juice and it's got a pithiness about it. It's classic Australian, classic Clare Riesling.
This is a wine it's a racy wine. It's made to age. Beautifully fragrant already, but it will build more and more fragrance as it ages. All sorts of interesting aromas. For a wine that's so young, it's a 2025, it's showing so much lovely fruit already, and yet this is a wine that is built to last.
All the vibrancy and youthfulness and linear acidity of young Riesling, this well and truly fits the bill, but I can attest the ageability of the Merle Riesling. I've had them at 10, 15 years of age, and they get to another sort of ethereal level of complexity and drive, but still retaining that great line, rapier-like acidity. Pretty spectacular stuff there to kick off our little Riesling rendezvous.
Yeah, and the second wine is Framingham. Framingham is in Marlborough, and my memory is correct. It was our very first top winery of New Zealand when we started doing the top winery series. It's the F series Old Vine Riesling from Marlborough, 2024 vintage. A slightly off-dry wine. It's not as dry as the Merle, but to most people's palates, that would probably effectively be dry. Do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, I do. And again, I think on the nose, there's aromas. There's a little bit of that citrus in there, but it's trending more towards just right white stone fruit. There's almost a bit of nectarine and peach in there, and some lovely white flowers. And I think on the palate as well, it's got lovely line and length, and again, acidity plays its role. But there's some really grippy phenolics as well, which again, I like that dryness, and I like what it does to the palate, and just giving it a bit of tension and drive.
Yeah, the sweetness lifts the fruit on the middle palate and makes it more accessible when it's young, I think. And then it's dry on the finish, as you say, because of the combination of phenolics and acidity. That's a lovely wine. I think there's a bit of that flinty character on the nose as well, which I really like.
With that acid drive and that texture of the tannins, the phenolics, lends itself to food beautifully.
Now, the next wine is another Kiwi wine. It's Dry River from Martinborough. Very famous producer, Dry River. This is their Craig Hall Vineyard Riesling 2023.
Yeah, we're sort of upping the complexity here. There's more layers of aromas there. There's a lot going on. The palate too is quite expansive. Acid is there and shaping it, but there's almost a baked apple element, or there's a doughiness. There's a volume of flavour there that really expresses itself really nicely on the palate, and again, great length.
Yeah, this is a wine that's got a bit more detail and a bit more nuance to it. And the fragrance is just emerging. When I taste that wine, I think if I left that for a few hours or kept it for a couple of years, it will just show so much more character. And these wines do age beautifully.
And it just shows that Riesling does have personality and can have a lot of complexity. Speaking of which, the fourth wine, you reviewed this recently.
This wine is called PJ Kühn, and they're in the Rheingau in Germany, which is on the Rhine River, of course, the Duisburg vineyard, and it's a GG, which is Grosses Gewächs, which means first growth in German. So that's the highest rated vineyard classification of the region. This is the oldest wine in our lineup. It's a 2021, and you can see from the colour that it's got a lot more colour than the young wines. But also I think this wine's had a bit of barrel ferment, probably fermentation and aging in old barrels, which is quite a normal thing to do with the GGs in Germany now.
It's 12% alcohol, so it's, you know, it has volume of flavour on the palate. There's a lot going on in the aromas because of that oak element. So what I like is then on the palate it has that drive of that just ripe nectarine or peach, melon, guava, and then that the acidity again, which Riesling's telltale zone of acidity kicks in and keeps everything fresh and lime. So Huon, we're heading into the end of this bracket of wines with two wines with residual sugar, and interestingly, we're in the Clare Valley in Polish Hill River from Rieslingfreak on the right-hand side of the screen, and then with Dr. Thanisch, his Riesling cabinet, the Bernkasteler Doctor. The Rieslingfreak's 7.5% alcohol, and the Thanisch is 8%. This is where low alcohol and acidity and a bit of residual sugar comes together. It's all about symbiotic relationships, and there's a lovely balance. And these two wines absolutely display what these low alcohols and the sugar can do around keeping everything in check and in balance. And that's the secret when it comes to lower alcohol and drinkability, is having some sweetness to balance that acidity out.
We're talking about a rarefied part of the Riesling market here. Most Riesling is drier than these wines, but these are special wines for special occasions, special use. You might have them with a light dessert, for example, but generally not with savoury foods, although they will go with pâtés and a bit of foie gras if you have some of that lying around. But they're quite sweet. The Rieslingfreak is, they're both what I would describe as cabinet level. So cabinet in Germany can be, up to 90 grams per litre, I think, is the ballpark we're talking about. And the Rieslingfreak has a very useful Riesling scale on the back of its label, and it's got a scale from dry to sweet, and it's medium sweet. This is not a wine for every kind of use. Fruit and fruit salad, ice cream would go well with a wine like this too, I think.
And it's interesting that globally the wine industry and big wine producers are talking about low alc and no alc wines. These are two of the original without trying to be it.
Yeah, well these two wines have a similarity. This is Old World, a classic style. This is New World Australia, sort of a wine inspired by that style of wine, with a similar level of acidity, low level of alcohol, slightly late-picked grapes. But look at the wines, and they're so different. This wine, being very young, 2025, is very pale, no colour at this point, and very tight on the palate. Very fragrant already. It's got lovely characters on the struck flint and citrus aromas, but the Thanisch Mosel wine, being a 2022 vintage, has got much more colour and much more developed bouquets.
I also get elements of that Bickford's brown lime juice in there as well. That's to me, in Mosel, there's always this, it's lime, but it's a darker, more exotic style of lime that sits there.
The range of fragrances in the German wines is, I think, always quite expansive and very lifted and very captivating, and part of the joy of these wines is just sniffing them. They're beautiful. Generally in Australia it's very difficult to make that sort of wine. We don't have the very, very cold climates like they have in the Mosel, but in selected parts of Tasmania, high altitude parts of the mainland, they can make this kind of wine, which is fragrant, delicate, beautiful. Four of these wines, these four, the Australian and New Zealand wines, these three are already on the classification, the real review classification of Australian and New Zealand wines. This wine, I believe, will be qualifying this year. 10 vintages of high scores for the Schatzkammer Rieslingfreak. Now, our system, of course, is based on the quality of the wines and how they perform over a period of a minimum of 10 years. That's our classification, both in Australia and New Zealand. But in Germany, where this Grosses Gewächs wine comes from, first growth wine, it's a very different system. The vineyards are rated. In other words, the classification is based on the vineyard itself, not on the wines in the bottle. So it's a very French style system, as they do in Burgundy, as they do in Alsace. And so a totally different system. We think ours is a good system because it's rating the wines in the glass.
Absolutely. Again, and one of the things with the Real Review that we pride ourselves on, without fear or favour, we review wines blind. We assess what's in the bottle, what's in the glass, not what's on the label or whether it's got some sort of classification from a government body. This has been a great little expose of Riesling with the 2 Australian, 2 New Zealand and the 2 German wines. Again, Australia has some great Riesling regions in the likes of Clare Valley, Eden Valley, Great Southern, Canberra. Get out there and explore these styles of Riesling. We've seen the evolution of the style of Riesling in Australia, and the evidence here from Rieslingfreak with the Schatzkammer, and then the New Zealand styles. Again, I think they're wines that have purity of fruit, great line, great precision in their flavour. And there's diversity here in Riesling. If you want to get out of your comfort zone of Australia, head across the ditch to New Zealand. If you want to go and explore even further, head along that way north to the Rheingau or the Mosel, or head off to Austria or off to Alsace, where there's some great Riesling as well.